Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan selamat kembali bersama dengan saya Khairy Jamaluddin. Saya nak ucapkan terima kasih kepada semua. Please hit the subscribe button dan jangan lupa untuk subscribe dan give us a like.
Eight artists. Alright, so ladies and gentlemen, next up we would like to invite our guest of honor, Mr. Khairy Jamaluddin, to deliver his speech.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera and good afternoon. Edmund, Suki, co-founders of FriendenArts, Michael, Melinda, all the parents and all the supporters and sponsors who are here with us today. Most importantly, our talented artists who are showcasing their talent and their masterpieces. Later, we get to see it for ourselves. When I was at the Ministry of Youth and Sports, many years ago, when I was young, there was one particular principle, or rather one burning objective that drove me, and that was for every young Malaysian to be able to fulfill their potential. And I felt that every young Malaysian, every Malaysian had different potentials in them. We cannot define potential as what mainstream society expectation has for Malaysians. Everyone has their potential. And I used to tell my ministry, we have to do everything with the resources that we have, with the power that we have, so that they can fulfill their potential. Society will not hold them back. The government certainly will not raise obstacles for young Malaysians to fulfill their potential. If their potential is to end up becoming a nuclear scientist, so be it. If their potential is to defy the odds, is to overcome physical disability and live a fulfilling life, not just for themselves, but for their family, for their friends, for society, then that's the business that we should be in. That's what drove me when I was at the Ministry of Youth and Sports. Now fast forward many years later, I ended up in the Ministry of Health. And I'm not a doctor, as you know. And the one thing that drove me at the Ministry of Health, and these two objectives coalesced and came together after a while, because the thing that drove me at the Ministry of Health was that I didn't want anyone to be left behind. I was appointed as Minister of Health at the height of a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic. And the buzzword then, that slogan that guided us was Lindung Diri, Lindung Semua, protect everyone, protect yourself to protect everyone. So we had to make sure that our strategy of immunizing as many people as possible against COVID-19 was done so that everyone was protected. And that led to us, most of you probably saw the big centers, what we used to call PPVs. You don't hear those letters anymore. But it wasn't about the big centers only, because there were people who couldn't get to the big centers. Even if they couldn't get to the big centers, it was too overwhelming for them. So we had to pivot to tactics and to come up with solutions which would make sure that this whole exercise of vaccinating almost 30 million people was as inclusive as possible. So we did it by having quiet rooms in our PPVs. Some of you may have gone there, brought your child there, and we did the vaccination in there. We did a drive-through vaccination center for people with disabilities who couldn't get out of their car, and we jabbed them while they were in the car. We sent mobile teams, thanks to the Red Crescent, St. John's Ambulance, National Cancer Society, to house visits so that people could get their vaccinations at home. And when Dr. Noisham, the Director General then of Health, saw that I was quite obsessed about making sure that we were inclusive, that no one was left behind, and when the hospitalization came down, the ICU admissions came down, I remember one day he came to me and said, Minister, let's go to the new mother and child hospital in GHKL. It's called Tunku Aziza Hospital. So I said, okay, let's go. You know, I like visiting hospitals and clinics, being on the ground, talking to people. And that was one of my first encounters with some of you. That was my first encounter because he made it a point that I met with parents of children who have rare diseases. And I met some of you, I met the parents, I met our kids who have rare disease. I came back and I said, Doc, what is it that we can do? And he educated me about rare diseases. One good thing about not having a doctor at the Ministry of Health is that the minister doesn't pretend that they know everything. They know nothing. So actually the Director General can educate that person from zero. And that's when I learned a little bit about rare disease. And I always believe that a society is only as great, a society and a civilization is only as advanced as how it looks after those who need help the most. No matter how advanced you are, no matter how rich you are as a society, but if you can't provide for those who need the help the most, whether it's medically, whether it's education, whether it's poverty, whether it's economic, then you're really not there as a civilized country. So we looked at the budget. I said, what's the problem here? And the DG told me, first and foremost, it's about money. The cost of treating someone with a rare disease, you all know this, is extremely high. It can cost up to R1 million a year. And there's simply not enough money across the public healthcare system. So I said, okay, first thing, in our strategic plan for rare diseases, we need to ask for more money. But we know there's a limitation to this. So I said, let's set up a trust fund. Let's set up a trust fund where we can pool money, public money, taxpayers' money, private money, foundations, endowments, charities, and look after it so that this fund can grow. So I hope we continue with this idea because it has to be sustainable. I'm no longer the Minister of Health. The Minister of Health cannot continue to go to Treasury every year and for you to be dependent on that. Of course the Minister can go to Ministry of Finance every year, that's the job. But for you to have to depend on that is not right. We need to give you some consistency of comfort to say that for the next X number of years, we've got you. We've got you. And even if we can't do the whole thing, then at least you know what your expectations are so that you can raise the other portion that needs to be raised. So that's one thing that we needed to do. Secondly, I wanted us to create a better database about rare disease in Malaysia. Only, according to a study, 60% of people with rare disease in Malaysia are actually treated. And some just fall by the wayside because there's not enough awareness about diagnosis. There are not enough trained specialists within the public healthcare system who understand enough about rare disease. I mean, you're talking about thousands of rare disease. And rare disease is defined in a sense that only 1 out of 4,000, less than 1 in 4,000 within a community has that condition. So you're talking about a slew of diseases, a slew of conditions where it's very difficult to spot and diagnose sometimes. So I said it's very important for us to train, get more specialists, have a database, so at least we can spot this quickly and try to intervene as quickly as we can. Third, and this is something that I never really said publicly, but I was also very, very insistent on pushing for the growth of clinical trials in Malaysia. A lot of people didn't make the link with rare disease, but the reason why I pushed Clinical Research Malaysia, which is a company under the Ministry of Health, to try to attract more clinical trials in Malaysia. The reason why I pushed for more clinical trial centers, like the First in Human Center now in Sarawak General Hospital, which they can do first in human trials in Sarawak GH, was because I wanted to attract the big pharmaceutical companies for which orphan drugs are not profitable. But I wanted to say that, look, it's not profitable, but you can have your pharmaceutical bragging rights. We do it in Malaysia, we'll make it easy for you, we'll approve it as fast as possible, so you can write it up and you can get accolades in the medical journal. And my drive towards creating Malaysia as a center for clinical research was not just because of the economic impact that it brings, but rather the cutting edge treatments that we can bring for people with rare disease and other conditions and diseases. So all of these things coalesced to me coming here today, because I've been out of office for almost a year, but I keep in close contact with things that I feel very strongly about, and I feel strongly about every child meeting their potential and fulfilling their potential. I feel very strongly about nobody being left behind. I feel very strongly about trying to make sure we have enough resources to provide for families and kids who require these treatments for a long time and sometimes throughout their lifetimes. So when I got this invitation, I mean, Suki went through Nori, my wife, I said yes. I was in Johor this morning. I had a function, another function, something else I feel close about, strongly about, which is to campaign against sexual abuse of children. I rushed back for all of you to honor the artists, to be here. Because if the community, all of you and me, if we don't continue to raise awareness, because as much as it affects you on a daily basis, it is called rare disease for a reason. It doesn't affect many people, so it can be forgotten. And we don't want to be forgotten. We don't want our kids to be forgotten. And that's why we need to continue to shout, and continue to demand, and continue to ask that if we want to be this developed nation, it's not just about dollars and cents. It's not just about gleaming skyscrapers. It's not just about fantastic infrastructure. It's about being able to provide for those who need it the most. So today, congratulations to FriendenArts, to Edmund and Suki. Please give a big round of applause to them. All of the parents, sponsors, and of course our artists. What we are about to see speaks from their hearts to our hearts, and whatever small influence I still have left in this country, let me know, and I will continue to speak out for you. Thank you. Thank you.
For the very, very heartwarming sharing session earlier on, but we will have another round of sharing session, also conducted by Zoe. This time around, according to Zoe, she and Edmund are going to interview our guest of honor today, Mr. Khairy Jamaluddin, because he's usually the one interviewing people, asking people questions, so now he is the one being asked the questions. So, without further ado, I would like to invite Zoe, Edmund, and also also Khairy Jamaluddin to the stage for this sharing session. Thank you.
So, selamat datang ke episod khas Sembang Sekejap dengan Khairy. So, it's quite nice being on this side. I wanted to ask, you know, you shared on your career and all the things you've been doing, and of course all of us, you know, I think the most recent impression is all the amazing work that you did during the COVID pandemic, right? To make us and protect us, not just with warm water, but really make a big difference. Now, you've made a big change now to be a broadcaster. Can you tell us a bit more about your experience and, you know, how are you keeping yourself busy these days?
Thanks, Edmund. So maybe I can answer that, I suppose, philosophically. When you come across a very extremely challenging fork in your life, you have to throw away whatever script you had and try to make the best of the situation. So somebody once told me, when life throws you lemons, you make lemonade. So I guess I started making a podcast. But it's not just broadcasting. I think I felt strongly about it because I want to have a more socially literate society. It's not just politics, it's about issues. Political issues, social issues, health issues, education, economic, and I wanted that conversation to be much more informed, so that when people ultimately make a decision, they do so having heard all sides of the argument, so to speak.
Thank you, Khairy. For me, I feel really privileged. When you were ex-Minister of Health, I don't know how many times I was trying to reach you to talk about COVID issues, you know, to give us caregivers the special opportunity, earlier opportunity to be given a vaccination. But right now we're sitting here, and instead of you interviewing, I'm interviewing you. So thank you. So all of us are a community here, and all of us want to feel belong in a society or in a community that we can recognize. Tell me, what advice would you give us on how to build a strong and supportive relationships with their own tribes?
I think it's very, very important. Let me try to link that with Edmund's question. So, one reason I'm in broadcasting is, of course, trying to make sure we have a more informed society. The other reason is, of course, I don't want to be forgotten on the off chance that I might want to go back into politics. Because the worst thing that can happen to an ex-politician is that you're forgotten. It makes it very difficult to start again if you want to. So I've not decided whether I'm going to go back, but just in case, I want to make sure that you all don't forget me. So, by the same token, any tribe which is committed towards a cause, and for your tribe that's the rare disease cause, you must never ever be forgotten. I cannot stress how important this is, because a policymaker like a minister, or the Director General of Health, or the Secretary General of the Ministry of Health, they have a limited bandwidth of what issues they need to deal with on a daily basis. And once they've ticked that box, they need to move on to something else. So you don't want to be the tribe that is ticked off once a year. Okay, we've done it already. We've given them 2 million ringgit. It was up from 1.5 million ringgit last year. And you know that's not enough. You know it has to be somewhere closer to, I don't know, 10, 50 million ringgit or whatever it is. So you must make sure that you continue to have a campaign mindset. any tribe that is organized towards a greater purpose must be campaigners. You must organize yourselves, you must talk, you must communicate like politicians, in a sense that you're running a campaign. Because people have limited bandwidth, people have limited attention, people have limited resources. Those people who are able to capture that attention for a sustained period of time, those tribes who are able to sustain that attention from the Ministry of Health, from the corporates, from civil society, those are the tribes or the communities which succeed. And of course, you don't make a value judgment because there are other patient groups, there are other family groups who are equally as important. But you know, in a limited space, you have to compete and you have to campaign for your family members and for your kids.
When we talk about a tribe, and it can be any group, even political groups and tribes as well, not everyone's going to be on the same page, right? And when not everyone's going to be on the same page, what's the best way to build agency and stay true to what you believe in? Because what happens is, between intention and then government machinery and the end results, intention sometimes gets deviated, and then when you're trying to bring it back, sometimes it's not to the right place. You know, it's an imperfect world. How do then people keep on going, right? Basically keep pushing around. Sometimes you're pushed out, sometimes you're back in. You know, how do you stay resilient in situations like this? And how do you stay resilient with all the changes that happen?
I think perseverance is important, and understanding exactly what Edmund said, which is this isn't a perfect world. In a perfect world, your career is linear. It's a linear trajectory on the way up. And I've discovered a couple of times at least, it's certainly not linear. And that's where your perseverance and your resilience comes in. A lot of people invite me to speak about resilient leadership. And I always define resilience as a coil or a spring, where you retain your shape again after a period of tremendous pressure or duress. That you are able to regroup again and you do not lose your shape or your purpose. But at the same time, don't be obstinate, don't be stubborn. I mean, I think it's very important. Just as much as your resilience as in regrouping is important, but you have to be able to understand that when you're dealing with very, very difficult situations, and that means bureaucracy, people, policymakers, people with the money, you have to be realists as well. So I mean, I understood that in politics, if you can't get to a place, oftentimes if you're obstinate, you try to run through the wall. You can't run through the wall, you have to go around it. You have to work out how you get around it until you get to where you want to go. So I would definitely counsel communities to be realistic about their expectations. I know it's difficult for me to say this to you because what you're dealing with is health, and sometimes it's life and death. The last thing you want is someone to come and see you and say, let's be realistic, you know, you can't get this much money this year, this is what you can get. I mean, I'm sure you've heard that too many times, once too many times. But I think it's important that, you know, don't take that as a disincentive to not want to try to get around the problem.
Change takes time, right? And that perseverance is important. In the meantime though, because a lot of pain and difficulty is very immediate, and you don't take care of it, you can't wait. What are some ways that you think the public or communities themselves can take agency with their own condition, not having to depend so much on a lot of, you know, big change to happen? You know, what are ways that, you know, people can just take charge of their condition and move on? How can the public support it?
See, the thing about politicians is that they latch on to success. even if the success is not their own, and usually it's not their own. So if they see a movement or community who are succeeding, then they'll want to latch onto you. So you have to make sure that you can demonstrate the success. As I said, not many politicians create success from scratch. They look around and see which is the bandwagon that I can hop onto, which will give political capital to me. I'm sorry I'm being cynical, but I'm a politician, so I'm allowed to say this. So if they think that you guys are, again, well organized, of course well-intentioned is there, but you are able to demonstrate that the utilization of the resources that they are able to give you, because that's ultimately what you want politicians for, money, and that it shines a light on whatever it is that they're trying to shine a light on for themselves. I think that's definitely one way your own agency can help you, because I don't want to be cynical about this, but like Edmund said, change takes time. If you're going to wait for this to happen, it's going to go through multiple committees. You all know this. You've been doing this for years. And even if you happen by fluke to get a good director general or a minister who's proactive, it may not last. And they're also limited by resources. So I think success is infectious. And I think, if you can show that you're a successful community, then people will come and come on board.
Thank you. I mean, having listened to what you have said, it takes a lot of passion to do what you need to do. So besides politics and podcasting, what are you passionate about?
Well, there are 3 P's, right? Politics, podcasting, and parenting.
So in terms of sequence,
the first P has to be the full-time job, which is to be a parent. I mean, some of you know this, but my second son is autistic. And he's 15 next month. And it's challenging. It's challenging. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you how challenging it is to be a parent to all of you, but all of us have challenges. That's my challenge, because having a child who's autistic, confront puberty, and having limitations in how he can communicate and express his feelings, and that's usually the case with some autistic people. It's and I can't fully empathize because I wouldn't know. One of the things that I try to tell people is that the mystery of autism is that you cannot imagine fully what their world is like. You try to change the world so that it is able to not accommodate them, but they are able to, we always ask the autistic child to change, but not try to change the world. So we try to change the world so that they can regulate themselves better. But we don't fully understand what we are changing also, because the cacophony of sounds, the multitude of movements, the blinding lights, we don't know, because each different person is different, who has neurodiversity. So I'm trying to make my way in the world as well, with Timor, who's my autistic son. So one blessing, I always, having gone through successes and failures in my professional political life, I always view everything that happens through a more divine perspective, that there is a reason for all of this. Maybe there is a reason for my current predicament, which is that it coincides with the fact that my son, who's going through adolescence, probably the toughest part of his life as somebody who's autistic, and God has told me to take some time out. Go and spend some time with your family, and especially with Timor. So that's it.
that's really touching. I mean, this is the first time I'm hearing this from...
I don't do feelings, but today I do a bit.
Wow. We are really honored. So having said that, how do you incorporate play and fun into your life and your family despite the challenges and the demanding responsibilities that you have?
So with Jibril and Rafe, I have 3 sons. With number 1, number 3, it's a bit easier because they're neurotypical. So it's anything from sports to playing video games and things like that. But the challenge again is how we are also inclusive in the house, because we know that if we go out and play football, if we go out and do something, it might exclude Timur. So it's not as fun, is it? If you're not with everyone. I had a very tough February this year, again, talking about feelings, because Timur was going through a very, very difficult period where he couldn't regulate himself. He was having frequent meltdowns, and we wanted to go on a holiday, his first holiday since I lost in the elections, and I said, why don't we go and see the snow? And we decided, in the end, Nori and I decided that she would stay back with Timur, because we were not confident as parents that he could do the flight. He's normally a great traveler, he travels well, but because of the frequent meltdowns, we felt that it was just after COVID, all kids were just anxious and we're just not normal or as normal as they were. So we had to leave him behind, and I had to tell him as I was leaving the house, I had to tell him that, Papa's going to go with Abang and Ade, and you're going to stay home with Mama. He's verbal, he speaks, but on that occasion he didn't say anything. He just put his head on my shoulder, and he left his head there for a good 5 minutes. That was really heartbreaking.
It made me tear again.
Yeah, I cried. It was really heartbreaking, because I knew, despite challenges of communication, he knew exactly what was going on. And so coming back to fun and games is only there when it's inclusive. And one, I almost teared up looking at the videos that you showed, because seeing your kids not being left behind even in art, something that you probably thought they couldn't do or would be a bit difficult for them to do, but they get so much enjoyment doing. I think that's what it's all about, isn't it? Being able to share those moments with everyone, and not say that let's do it with the other kids, not them, not him, not her. I think we have to make sure everyone's having fun.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I feel really honored to see a side of you that few people do. Are we doing okay as a host?
You want to take over my podcast?
Too hot. But I'll try a question. Do you like art?
It usually works better when you say, why don't you like something?
Okay. See, I'm still learning.
Yes, we're big art collectors. We've been collecting art, local artists, because I suppose the price point is better, plus we like to support local for the longest time. And I've collected anything really. So I'm looking forward to seeing this stuff today. Why do I like art? Because I think two reasons. One is an aesthetic reason. I think your life lights up with art and music. I think without art and music, the world will be a poorer place. And I think we should, with the limited resources that we have, there's so many things that we can spend money on. But if I ever am in a position where I can help or dictate or direct this, we should spend more money on the arts, because it makes life much richer. That's the aesthetic reason. And the non-aesthetic reason, because art is not just for art's sake, is that it tells the story of us. I always tell people that if you are traveling back from time, or if you're an alien and you end up somewhere, if I was an alien and I ended up somewhere, I wouldn't ask to meet with the leader of that place, because usually that person is probably useless. But I would ask No, I didn't mean that in any particular person. But I don't say that usually, I would ask to see art of that planet or that place, because that tells me it's a marker of their civilization. It's what they are about. So that's why art is important to me.
Thank you everyone for tuning in to Sembang Sekejap, episode 1. Round of applause for our incredible guests. Thank you.
Saya nak ucapkan terima kasih kepada semua. Please hit the subscribe button dan jangan lupa untuk subscribe dan give us a like.